The great crystal palace of the Galactic Council floated in the void between stars, its walls made of pure diamond that sparkled with the light of distant suns. Inside the massive meeting hall, 12 different alien species sat around a table that could have held a small city. Each species thought they were the smartest, the strongest, the most important in the galaxy. Captain Zethkari stood at attention before the council. His crystalline body caught the light and threw rainbow patterns across the walls. He was proud to be Vorthak, proud to serve the most advanced military force in known space. The Vorthak Empire had never lost a war in 3,000 years. "The humans are becoming a problem," said Ambassador Keth Moran, his 6 arms waving as he spoke. The Keth Morans were known for their intelligence, but they were also known for their cruelty. They have spread to 47 star systems in the past 20 years. This is far beyond what we allowed them. The council murmured agreement. When the humans had first arrived in their slow, ugly ships 50 years ago, the aliens had laughed. These soft, weak creatures with their short lives and primitive technology were barely worth noticing. The council had given them permission to settle on a few dead worlds at the edge of the galaxy, expecting them to stay there quietly until they went extinct. But humans did not stay quiet. Elder Shixtal of the gas-dwelling nebula folk spoke in a voice like wind through caves. "Their breeding rate is disturbing. They reproduce faster than any civilized species should. At this rate, they will outnumber several of our member races within 2 centuries. More concerning is their technology development," added General Vrix of the Warrior Saurian Dominion. His scales rippled with annoyance. "Our observers report they have developed new engine designs, new weapons, new methods of construction. They refuse to share these advances with the Council." Captain Zethkari had read the reports. The humans were strange in ways that made him uncomfortable. They did not follow the normal patterns of civilized development. Most species joined the Galactic Council after their first contact, happy to learn from older, wiser races. They accepted guidance, followed rules, and found their place in the grand order of things. Humans did none of this. Prime Counselor Thisek, the ancient leader of the energy beings called the Eternal Flame, spoke with a voice that echoed in their minds rather than their ears. "The question before us is simple. Do we allow this chaos to continue, or do we restore proper order?" The vote was never in doubt. 12 species, 12 votes for what they called corrective action. The humans would be relocated to a single world. Their expansion would stop. Their weapons would be taken away. Their technology would be studied and controlled by proper authorities. Captain Zethkari received his orders with pride. He would command a fleet of 1,000 ships, the largest peacekeeping force ever assembled. The humans would see the glory of Vorthak crystal ships and understand their place in the universe. As he prepared to leave, Ambassador Keth Moran approached him. "Captain, be sure the humans understand this is for their own good. Primitive species often struggle when they try to advance too quickly. We are helping them by slowing their dangerous growth." 3 days later, Dr. Sarah Chen sat in her small office on New Geneva, humanity's diplomatic headquarters. She had been Earth's chief ambassador to the galaxy for 15 years, and she knew this day would come. The message from the Galactic Council was polite but firm. All human colonies must be abandoned within 60 standard days. All humans must relocate to the world designated as Human Reservation Alpha 7. All human military vessels must report to Council facilities for decommissioning. Sarah had tried so hard to prevent this. She had attended every council meeting, had made friends among the smaller alien races, had warned anyone who would listen about what would happen if they pushed humanity too far. But the great powers of the galaxy saw humans the same way humans once saw ants. Interesting, perhaps, but not truly important. She activated her emergency communication system and sent a message to Earth. "It's happening. The Council has voted for relocation. We have 60 days. The response from President Martinez came back within hours. Message received. Dr. Chen, please inform the Council that humanity respectfully declines their generous offer." Sarah closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She had studied human history all her life. She knew what happened when humans were backed into corners. The aliens thought they were dealing with a primitive species, but they had no idea what 3 billion years of evolution on a death world had created. The next morning, she requested an audience with the full council. They granted it, no doubt expecting her to beg for more time or better terms. Instead, Sarah stood before the most powerful beings in the galaxy and delivered a warning they would not understand until it was too late. "Honorable counselors," she began, her voice steady despite the fear in her heart. "I come before you not to negotiate but to warn you. You believe you understand humanity, but you do not. You see our short lives and think we are weak. You see our small territory and think we are insignificant. You see our simple technology and think we are primitive." The aliens listened with the patient attention they might give to a child's tantrum. "Let me tell you about my species," Sarah continued. "We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every single day. Our planet had ice ages that lasted thousands of years. It had plagues that killed half our population. It had volcanoes that blocked out the sun and meteor strikes that changed the shape of continents. Every few million years something happened that should have made us extinct." Ambassador Keth Morin made a dismissive gesture. "Many worlds are harsh. This does not make you special. What makes us special is that we survived," Sarah said. "Not just survived, we thrived. We learned that when the world tries to destroy you, you become harder to destroy. When enemies attack you, you learn to attack back. When someone tries to cage you, you learn to break cages." Elder Shixtel's gaseous form rippled with what might have been amusement. "Are you threatening the Council, Dr. Chen?" "I am warning you," Sarah replied. "You are about to discover why humanity spread to 47 star systems in 20 years. You are about to learn why we develop technology faster than any species you have encountered. You are about to understand why every predator on our world learned to avoid hunting humans." Prime Counselor Thysek's mental voice carried certainty that had been built over 10,000 years of galactic dominance. "Dr. Chen, your species lacks the genetic modifications that allow for true warfare. You have not evolved the specialized organs for military coordination that our warrior races possess. You do not have the mental disciplines that allow for proper strategic thinking. You are, by any scientific measure, biologically obsolete as a military force." Sarah looked around the Great Hall, at beings who controlled fleets of millions of ships, who had conquered thousands of worlds, who had never known defeat. She felt sorry for them. "You are right about one thing," she said quietly. "We have not evolved specialized organs for warfare. We evolved something much more dangerous. We evolved the ability to make anything into a weapon. We evolved the refusal to surrender. We evolved the capacity to hate our enemies so completely that we will follow them across the galaxy to destroy them." She turned to leave, then looked back one final time. "Captain Zeth Kari, I know you are listening to this. When your beautiful crystal ships arrive at our worlds, when your 1,000-vessel fleet surrounds our colonies, when you demand our surrender, please remember that you were warned. Please remember that humanity offered to live in peace. Please remember that what happens next is not our choice but yours." As Sarah left the council chamber, she could hear the aliens discussing her words. Their laughter followed her down the crystal corridors. They thought she was being dramatic, that her primitive emotions had overcome her reason. They had no idea that her words were being broadcast live to every human colony, every human ship, every human military base in known space. They did not know that in deep space construction facilities, humanity's greatest engineers were putting the finishing touches on weapons that would redefine warfare. They could not imagine that 300 human warships were already moving into position, their crews saying goodbye to families they might never see again. Most importantly, they did not understand that Dr. Sarah Chen had not come to the council to beg or negotiate or threaten. She had come to declare war. Captain Zeth Kari returned to his flagship with confidence in his crystalline heart. The Galactic Council had given him a simple task: escort humanity to their new home. If they resisted, he had permission to use force. His 1,000 ships represented the finest military technology in the galaxy. Each vessel was a work of art, its crystal hull shaped by master craftsmen and powered by energy systems that could crack planets. As his fleet assembled in the staging area, Zeth Kari reviewed the intelligence reports on human military capability. Their largest warship was barely 300 meters long, a toy compared to his own flagship, which stretched for 2 kilometers and carried enough firepower to glass a continent. Human weapons were chemical explosives and metal projectiles, primitive things that belonged in a museum. The humans had numbers, he would give them that. Intelligence suggested they could field perhaps 300 ships. Against his 1,000 vessels with their energy shields and plasma cannons, the humans would last perhaps an hour. Most of that time would be spent accepting their surrender. 3 days later, the Great Vorthak Armada entered the Sol system, humanity's home. What they found waiting for them near the red planet Mars was exactly what their intelligence had predicted. A pathetic collection of human vessels, arranged in a loose formation that spoke of desperation rather than strategy. Zethkari opened a communication channel to the human fleet. Attention, human vessels. This is Captain Zethkari of the Galactic Council Peacekeeping Fleet. By order of the Council, you will power down your weapons and prepare to be escorted to your new homeworld. Any resistance will be met with appropriate force. The response came from a woman's voice, calm and professional. This is Commander Elena Vasquez of the United Earth Defense Force. Captain Zethkari, this is your final opportunity to withdraw from this system. We do not wish to fight, but we will not surrender. Zethkari almost felt sorry for them. The human commander sounded brave, but bravery meant nothing against superior technology. He gave the order his crew was expecting. All ships prepare to fire warning shots. Let us show these primitives what they face. But as his weapons charged and his fleet moved into attack formation, Zethkari noticed something in the human formation that made his crystal skin crawl. The human ships were not trying to run. They were not begging for mercy. They were not even trying to negotiate. They were waiting. And in the space around Mars, something was happening to the asteroids and debris that had been floating there for billions of years. The rocks were moving, shifting, forming patterns that looked almost like... Zethkari's sensors screamed a warning just as the first human weapon fired. The first human weapon that fired was not a laser or plasma cannon. It was a simple metal slug, accelerated to nearly the speed of light by magnetic fields. Captain Zethkari watched in disbelief as the primitive projectile punched through his flagship's energy shields like they were made of paper. The crystal hull that had taken master craftsmen years to grow cracked and shattered as the metal tore through 3 decks. But that was just the beginning. All around the human formation, the asteroids that had been floating in Mars orbit suddenly came alive. Hidden inside each one was a human weapon platform, invisible to Vorthak sensors until the moment they opened fire. Hundreds of metal slugs streaked across space, followed by bright flashes that Zethkari's computer identified as nuclear explosions, nuclear weapons. The humans were using nuclear weapons in space combat. Impossible, breathed his weapons officer. Nuclear devices are forbidden by the Galactic Convention on Civilized Warfare. No species would dare. The officer's words were cut off as another human projectile struck their ship. This one carried a nuclear warhead that detonated against their hull, turning a section of beautiful crystal into radioactive dust. Emergency alarms rang throughout the bridge as atmosphere rushed out through the breach. Zethkari had fought in 17 battles during his career. He had faced the Savage Reaper clans and the disciplined machine armies of the Synthetic Collective. He had commanded fleets in the Great War against the hive mind expansion. But he had never seen anything like what the humans were doing. They were not following the rules. For 10,000 years, galactic warfare had been conducted according to civilized principles. Fleets faced each other in organized formations. Weapons were fired in coordinated volleys. Targets were military installations and warships, never civilian populations. Wars were fought until one side admitted defeat. Then terms were negotiated and honor was restored. Humans fought like wild animals. Commander Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of her flagship, the UES Defiant, and watched the alien fleet struggle to understand what was happening to them. Her crew worked around her with the smooth efficiency of people who had trained for this moment their entire careers. Every human in this fleet was a volunteer. Every one of them knew they would probably die in the next few hours. But dying had never frightened humans the way it frightened other species. Target the big crystal ship, Elena ordered. All railgun batteries concentrated fire. I want that thing turned into space dust. Her weapons officer, Lieutenant Park, grinned as he worked his controls. Pleasure, Commander. Sending the aliens our regards. 20 human ships focused their magnetic accelerators on Zethkari's flagship. The metal projectiles struck within seconds of each other, each one carrying the kinetic energy of a small asteroid. The beautiful Vorthak vessel, pride of their crystal fleets, came apart like a shattered window. But Elena knew the real battle was just beginning. The aliens had superior numbers, and their remaining ships were adapting to human tactics. Energy beams lanced out from the enemy formation, turning 2 human vessels into expanding clouds of plasma. The Vorthak were learning. All ships execute Wolfpack Protocol, Elena commanded. Across the human fleet, captains who had once commanded merchant vessels and exploration ships began implementing tactics that would have horrified any civilized military force. Instead of maintaining formation, the human ships scattered like frightened prey. Then they began to hunt. Captain Sarah Kim of the converted freighter New Destiny watched as a group of elegant Saurian destroyers moved to intercept her ship. The aliens expected her to run or surrender. Instead, she aimed her vessel directly at the center of their formation and accelerated to ramming speed. "All hands brace for impact," she announced calmly. "It's been an honor serving with you." The New Destiny struck the lead Saurian ship at a significant fraction of light speed. The explosion lit up space for thousands of kilometers, taking out 4 alien vessels and crippling 2 more. Captain Kim and her crew of 47 volunteers became the first humans to die in the war that would reshape the galaxy. They would not be the last. Zethkari transferred his flag to another ship and tried to understand what he was seeing. His tactical display showed chaos where there should have been organized battle lines. Human ships darted between his formations like insects, striking at weak points and disappearing before his weapons could target them. When cornered, they did not surrender. They exploded, taking his ships with them. "Captain," his new weapons officer reported, "we have lost 137 ships. The humans have lost only 43. How is that possible?" Zethkari demanded. "They are primitives. Their technology is thousands of years behind ours." But even as he spoke, he watched a human corvette ram itself into the hangar bay of a Kethmaran battlecruiser. The small ship's nuclear reactor overloaded on impact, gutting the alien vessel from the inside. The humans were turning their own ships into weapons, sacrificing themselves without hesitation to destroy enemies twice their size. Commander Vasquez saw the alien fleet beginning to fall back and pressed her advantage. "All ships pursue. Do not let them regroup. I want every alien vessel in this system destroyed or driven off." Her communications officer looked up with concern. "Commander, we're receiving surrender requests from 12 alien ships. They're asking for quarter under the Galactic Convention." Elena's expression hardened. "Tell them we don't recognize their convention. They came here to relocate our people at gunpoint. They came here to steal our worlds. There will be no mercy until they leave human space." The battle raged for another 4 hours. By the time it was over, 300 alien ships had been destroyed, damaged, or forced to withdraw. The mighty Vorthak fleet, pride of the galactic military, retreated in disorder from a force they had expected to defeat in minutes. Captain Zethkari sat in the ruins of his second flagship and tried to compose a report for the Galactic Council. How could he explain that humans had defeated him using tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare? How could he tell the Council that these primitive beings had weapons that could punch through shields that had protected alien fleets for millennia? Most difficult of all, how could he explain the look in the human commander's eyes when she had refused his surrender requests? Zethkari had seen hatred before, in the eyes of conquered enemies and defeated rivals. But what Elena Vasquez had shown was something else entirely. A cold, calculating fury that promised this was only the beginning. His communications officer interrupted his thoughts. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet." "Put it through," Zethkari ordered, dreading what he might hear. Commander Vasquez's image appeared on his screen. Behind her, Zethkari could see her crew working to repair battle damage while they prepared for the next engagement. They looked tired but not defeated. If anything, they seemed energized by their victory. "Captain Zethkari," Elena said, "I want you to carry a message back to your Galactic Council. Tell them that humanity does not accept their authority over us. Tell them we will not be relocated, disarmed, or controlled. Tell them that any alien fleet that enters human space will be destroyed." Zethkari found his voice. "Commander, you cannot fight the entire galaxy. We have millions of ships, billions of soldiers. Your victory today was impressive, but it was against a single fleet. We will return with forces you cannot imagine." Elena smiled, and Zethkari felt his crystal skin grow cold. "Captain, let me tell you something about humans. We have been fighting wars on our world for 50,000 years. We have perfected every form of combat from hand-to-hand fighting to nuclear warfare. We have studied every military strategy ever devised and created new ones your people have never seen. What you witnessed today was not desperation. It was restraint." She leaned forward and her voice became deadly serious. "We used simple kinetic weapons and nuclear devices because we wanted to give you a chance to withdraw with honor. We could have used weapons that would have turned your entire fleet into component atoms. We could have eliminated every alien in this system without losing a single human life. We chose not to do that because we hoped you would carry a message back to your masters. Zethkari's sensors were detecting something troubling. Energy signatures were building throughout the human formation, weapon systems powering up that his computers could not identify. Whatever the humans had in reserve, it was beyond anything in the Vorthak databases. The message is simple, Elena continued. Leave us alone and we will leave you alone. Force us to fight, and you will learn why every predator on Earth eventually learned to avoid hunting humans. We are not prey, Captain. We are apex predators who have spent 10,000 years learning to kill anything that threatens our survival. The transmission ended, leaving Zethkari alone with his defeat and his fears. Around him, the surviving ships of his once mighty fleet began the long journey home, carrying with them news that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Galactic Council's forces had been defeated, not by another great power with superior technology, but by a species they had dismissed as primitive and harmless. As his damaged fleet limped away from the Sol system, Zethkari found himself wondering what other surprises humanity might have in reserve. The energy signatures his sensors had detected suggested weapons technology that should not have been possible for such a young species. Behind him, the human fleet was already beginning repairs and preparing for the next battle. They were not celebrating their victory, they were getting ready for war. 3 days later, the news reached every corner of the galaxy. The impossible had happened. Humanity had defeated a Galactic Council fleet. The broadcasts included tactical recordings that military analysts across known space studied with growing unease. The humans had used nuclear weapons in space combat, something that had been forbidden for thousands of years. They had employed ramming attacks, turning their own ships into missiles. They had refused to accept surrenders and had shown no mercy to defeated enemies. Most disturbing of all, they had done it with weapons that seemed crude and primitive compared to standard galactic technology. If this was what humans could accomplish with simple kinetic weapons and nuclear devices, what might they be capable of with more advanced systems? In the deep laboratories of Earth and her colonies, humanity's scientists were already answering that question. Dr. James Harrison stood in a secure facility hidden in the shadow of Saturn's rings and watched as his greatest creation took shape. The project had begun 5 years ago, when first contact had shown humanity their place in the galactic order. It would be completed in 18 months, just in time for the war that was certainly coming. Behind him, his assistant studied the tactical data from the battle at Mars. Doctor, the aliens are already calling in reinforcements. Intelligence suggests they're assembling the largest war fleet in galactic history. Dr. Harrison smiled as he looked at his nearly finished masterpiece. Let them come. When they arrive, humanity will show them what happens when you threaten the survival of an apex predator species. The galaxy would learn that defeating one human fleet had not ended the war. It had only taught humanity what kind of weapons they would need to win it. Admiral Crixtholan of the Netherrack Dominion stood 8 feet tall and was covered in scales that could deflect most energy weapons. His species had evolved from the apex predators of their homeworld, and they had never met another race that could match them in combat. When the Galactic Council asked him to lead the largest war fleet in galactic history, he had accepted the honor with pleasure. The humans would learn what happened when primitives challenged their betters. His flagship, the Devourer of Stars, was 5 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. Around it, 10,000 ships from 8 different species assembled in the staging area beyond the galactic rim. The Council had decided that humanity's rebellion would end quickly and permanently. Admiral, his intelligence officer reported, we have received the final casualty reports from Captain Zethkari's engagement. 300 ships destroyed or disabled. The Vorthak are calling it the worst military disaster in their species' history. Crixtholan examined the tactical recordings with growing interest rather than concern. The humans had indeed fought well for primitives, but they had also revealed their capabilities. Nuclear weapons and kinetic projectiles were dangerous but predictable. More importantly, the humans had been forced to sacrifice dozens of their own ships to achieve their victory. They fight like desperate prey, he told his staff. Dangerous when cornered, but ultimately doomed. We will not make the mistakes Captain Zethkari made. We will not underestimate them, and we will not give them the chance to use their suicide tactics. His fleet included warships from the Saurian Dominion, energy beings from the Eternal Flame, the crystalline vessels of the Vorthak Empire, and the biomechanical horrors of the Hive Mind Collective. Each species brought their own particular strengths to the campaign. Together they represented the greatest military force ever assembled. But as the Great Armada prepared to depart for human space, reports began arriving that troubled even Krikstolan's predator confidence. Human colonies throughout the Outer Rim were being evacuated. Their populations moved to heavily defended core worlds. Human merchant vessels had disappeared from galactic trade routes. Most disturbing of all, human diplomatic missions were being withdrawn from every alien world simultaneously. "It appears they are preparing for a siege," observed his tactical officer. "They are consolidating their forces and cutting ties with the galactic community." Krikstolan studied the star charts showing human space. 47 star systems connected by established trade routes with Earth at the center. It was a compact territory that could be easily blockaded and systematically conquered. The humans were making a classic mistake, allowing themselves to be surrounded. "They are making our task easier," he decided. "Once we control the space around their worlds, they will have no choice but to surrender." Begin the advance. The great alien armada moved into human space like a slow tide of destruction. Krikstolan's strategy was simple and brutal. Isolate each human colony, destroy its defenses, and make an example that would terrify the remaining worlds into submission. He would show the galaxy what happened to species that defied the Council's will. The first human colony they reached was Kepler 442b, a mining world with 12 million inhabitants. The planet's orbital defenses included 30 human warships and a network of weapon satellites. Against Krikstolan's 1,000-ship advance force, they lasted exactly 17 minutes. What followed was not battle but extermination. The Admiral had specific orders from the Council: make humanity understand the price of rebellion. The colonists were not given the mercy of quick death. Instead, they were subjected to the Netheric practice of educational termination, a slow, agonizing process broadcast on all frequencies so that other human worlds could witness their fate. Krikstolan watched from his flagship as the planet's cities burned. The humans had fought bravely but uselessly. Their simple weapons could not penetrate his ship's shields, and their tactics meant nothing against overwhelming firepower. As he recorded a message for transmission to the remaining human colonies, he felt the satisfaction of a job well done. "Humans of the outer world," he broadcast, "witness the fate of those who resist the Council's will. Kepler 442b is now a tomb. Its 12 million inhabitants are dead. Their suffering was great because they chose to fight rather than submit. You have one standard day to surrender unconditionally, or you will share their fate." The human response came faster than expected. It was not a surrender or a plea for mercy. Instead, every human colony, every human ship, every human installation began broadcasting the same message on all frequencies. Remember Kepler 442b. Remember the 12 million. Remember who did this to us. When the time comes for justice, remember. Krikstolan laughed at their defiance. Primitives always make dramatic speeches when they face extinction. It changes nothing. But as his fleet moved deeper into human space, continuing their systematic destruction of human worlds, something began to trouble the Admiral. The humans were fighting, but not the way he expected. They were not trying to hold their colonies or protect their populations. Instead, they seemed to be buying time. Every engagement followed the same pattern. Human ships would attack his forces just long enough to delay their advance, then withdraw before they could be destroyed. Human ground forces would sabotage their own facilities rather than let them be captured. Most puzzling of all, the human fleet was falling back toward the Sol system, drawing his armada exactly where Admiral Torres seemed to want them. "They are retreating to their homeworld for a final battle," his intelligence officer reported after analyzing human communications. Standard defensive strategy for a doomed species. But something about the human transmissions bothered Krikstolan. They were not the desperate messages of a defeated people. Instead, they seemed almost eager, as if the humans were looking forward to what came next. 3 weeks after the destruction of Kepler 442b, the great alien armada reached the outskirts of the Sol system. What they found there was exactly what intelligence had predicted. The remnants of humanity's fleet, perhaps 500 ships, arranged in defensive formations around their homeworld. Krikstolan felt disappointment rather than satisfaction. After destroying 8 human colonies and killing 200 million people, he had hoped for a more impressive final battle. The human fleet was barely half the size of his advance guard, let alone his full armada. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "we are receiving a transmission from the human fleet. It is directed specifically to you." "Put it through," Crixtholan ordered, expecting to hear surrender terms or final pleas for mercy. Instead, he found himself looking at a human woman in military uniform. Admiral Lisa Torres, according to his intelligence files. She appeared calm and professional, not like someone facing the annihilation of her species. "Admiral Crixtholan," she said, "I am Admiral Torres of the United Earth Defense Force. Before we begin our final engagement, I want to thank you." Crixtholan's scales rippled with confusion. "Thank me?" "Yes," Torres replied. "For the past 3 weeks you have demonstrated to every human in the galaxy exactly what we are fighting against. You have shown us what happens when we try to coexist peacefully with your Galactic Council. You have given us perfect clarity about what we must do to ensure our survival." The human admiral's expression hardened. "You destroyed Kepler 442b. You killed 12 million civilians, including children. You broadcast their deaths across the galaxy as a warning to others. You have done this to 7 more of our worlds, always making sure the dying took as long as possible." Crixtholan felt a strange chill despite his predator confidence. "Your people defied the Council's will. The consequences were inevitable." "No," Torres said quietly. "The consequences were chosen. You could have accepted our independence. You could have allowed us to live in peace on our own worlds. You could have recognized that humanity was never a threat to your galactic order. Instead, you decided to make us an example." She leaned forward, and Crixtholan saw something in her eyes that reminded him of his own species' hunting instincts. "Admiral, you have succeeded beyond your wildest dreams. You have made us an example, but not the kind you intended." Around the Sol system, Crixtholan's sensors began detecting energy signatures that made no sense. Something massive was powering up in the shadow of the planet called Saturn, something that his computers could not identify or classify. "You see, Admiral," Torres continued, "humans learn from their mistakes. The mistake we made was believing we could coexist with species that see genocide as an acceptable diplomatic tool. We will not make that mistake again." The energy readings from Saturn were climbing beyond anything in Crixtholan's database. Whatever the humans had hidden there, it was drawing power from sources that should not have been possible for such a primitive species. "When this battle is over," Torres said, "one of 2 things will happen. Either you will destroy the last human fleet and claim victory, or humanity will demonstrate why we survived 50,000 years of evolution on a world that tried to kill us every single day." The transmission ended, leaving Crixtholan staring at a tactical display that showed impossible energy readings building in the outer system. His intelligence officer was working frantically at his console, trying to understand what they were detecting. "Admiral," the officer reported with barely controlled panic, "whatever the humans have hidden near Saturn is massive. The power signature is off our scales, and it's moving." Something was indeed moving in the shadow of Saturn's rings, something vast and dark that began to eclipse the distant sun as it turned toward the alien fleet. Crixtholan's sensors could barely define its shape. It seemed to be the size of a small moon, bristling with systems that his computers could not identify. "All ships," Crixtholan commanded, "battle stations. Prepare for engagement with unknown vessel." But even as he gave the order, a part of him was beginning to understand that he had made a terrible mistake. The humans had not been retreating to their homeworld for a final desperate battle. They had been leading him and his entire armada to exactly where they wanted them. In the shadow of Saturn, Dr. James Harrison stood on the bridge of the UESS Retribution and watched the alien fleet react to their first sight of his creation. The vessel had taken 5 years to build, incorporating every piece of alien technology that humanity had captured or stolen during their expansion into space. But its most important components were purely human: the fusion reactors that powered it, the gravitational manipulation systems that moved it, and most importantly, the crew that operated it. 12,000 volunteers, every one of them survivors of the colonies that Crixtholan had destroyed. 12,000 humans who had lost everything to alien brutality, and who had sworn to make the galaxy remember the price of awakening humanity's full wrath. Captain Marcus Steele, the former mining engineer from Kepler 442b who had watched his family die in the orbital bombardment, stood beside Dr. Harrison and watched the alien armada on their main screen. 10,000 ships, the greatest military force in galactic history, all of them focused on the Sol system. "Doctor," he said quietly, "are we ready?" Dr. Harrison nodded. "All systems are green, Captain. The Retribution is ready for combat." Marcus turned to his crew, survivors like himself who had volunteered for a mission they all knew was probably suicide. "Ladies and gentlemen, today we send a message to the galaxy. Today we show them what happens when they make the mistake of thinking humans are prey." He took his place in the captain's chair and gave the order that would change the course of galactic history. "All stations, this is the captain. Take us to battle speed. It's time to darken the heavens." The UESS Retribution began to move, and as it accelerated toward the alien fleet, its massive bulk began to block out the stars themselves. Admiral Crixtholin's great armada found themselves staring at a human weapon that defied every principle of physics they understood. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity had spent the last 5 years preparing for this moment, and now the teaching would begin. The UESS Retribution was not just a ship. It was a monument to human ingenuity and fury, built from the wreckage of dreams and powered by the grief of survivors. As it emerged from Saturn's shadow, its true size became clear to Admiral Crixtholin's fleet. The human construct was larger than most moons, its dark hull absorbing light rather than reflecting it. Captain Marcus Steele stood on the bridge that had once been his mining station's control center, rebuilt and expanded into the command core of humanity's greatest weapon. Around him worked the survivors of 8 destroyed colonies, people who had lost everything to alien cruelty, and who had spent 3 years learning to operate systems that pushed the boundaries of known physics. "All stations report ready." "Captain," announced his weapons officer, Lieutenant Sarah Kim, sister of the Captain Kim who had died ramming her ship into alien destroyers at Mars. "Primary gravitational systems are online. Secondary weapons batteries are charged. All crew members are at battle stations." Marcus looked at the main display which showed the alien armada spreading out in attack formation. 10,000 ships representing the combined military might of 8 different species. Under normal circumstances, even the Retribution would be overwhelmed by such numbers. But these were not normal circumstances. "Dr. Harrison," Marcus said to the elderly scientist who had designed their impossible weapon, "please confirm that all systems are operating within acceptable parameters." Dr. Harrison checked his console one final time. 5 years of work had gone into this moment. 5 years of studying captured alien technology, of pushing human science beyond its limits, of preparing for a war that most people had hoped would never come. "All systems green, Captain. The gravitational manipulation array is stable. The power core is operating at optimal efficiency and the crew is ready. We can begin the demonstration whenever you're prepared." Marcus opened a communication channel to the alien fleet. He wanted Admiral Crixtholin to understand exactly what was about to happen to him. "Admiral Crixtholin," he said, his voice carrying across space to the enemy flagship, "this is Captain Marcus Steele of the United Earth Defense Force. You may remember my name from the casualty lists of Kepler 442b. You killed my wife, my children, and 12 million of my neighbors. Today I'm going to show you what happens when you make humans angry." Admiral Crixtholin stared at his tactical display and tried to understand what he was seeing. The human vessel was indeed massive, but size alone did not determine victory in space combat. His fleet carried enough firepower to reduce a planet to molten rock. Whatever the humans had built, it could not stand against 10,000 warships. "All ships," he commanded, "concentrate fire on the human vessel. I want it destroyed immediately." The alien fleet opened fire with everything they had: energy beams that could melt mountains, plasma cannons that burned at the temperature of stars, kinetic projectiles that could punch through any known armor. The combined firepower of 10,000 ships struck the Retribution in a display that lit up the entire solar system. When the light faded, the human vessel was still there. Not only was it undamaged, it seemed to have absorbed the energy of the alien attack. The dark hull was now glowing with barely contained power, and readings on Crixtholin's sensors showed energy levels that should have been impossible. "Impossible," breathed his weapons officer. "Our combined fire should have vaporized anything short of a star." "What kind of defenses do they have?" Captain Steele's voice came across the communication channel again, calm and professional. "Thank you, Admiral. Your attack has provided the Retribution with enough energy to demonstrate our primary weapon system. I hope you find the results educational. On the human vessel's bridge, Dr. Harrison was monitoring power levels that would have terrified any normal engineer. Captain, we have absorbed 97% of their attack energy. The gravitational manipulation array is now operating at full capacity. Marcus looked at his crew one final time. These people had volunteered for this mission knowing they would probably die. They had accepted the risk because they understood what was at stake. If the retribution failed, humanity would be exterminated. If it succeeded, the galaxy would learn to fear and respect their species. Fire, he ordered. The retribution's primary weapon was not a laser or plasma cannon. It was a directed gravitational field, a controlled manipulation of space-time itself that could crush matter down to the atomic level or tear it apart with tidal forces that nothing could resist. The first shot was aimed at a group of Saurian heavy cruisers on the edge of Krikstholin's formation. The gravitational pulse traveled at the speed of light, invisible to sensors until it struck its targets. When it hit, space itself seemed to fold inward, creating a miniature black hole that lasted for only a fraction of a second. When the gravitational distortion collapsed, the 3 alien vessels were gone. Not destroyed, gone. Compressed to a point of infinite density and then dispersed as elementary particles. There was not even debris left behind. Admiral Krikstholin watched his ships disappear and felt something he had never experienced in his career as a warrior. Fear. Pure, cold fear of something that was beyond his ability to fight or understand. All ships evasive maneuvers, he commanded, but even as he gave the order, he knew it was useless. His fleet was massive and powerful, but they were also slow. The human weapon had just demonstrated that it could delete his ships from existence with surgical precision. The second gravitational pulse targeted a formation of Vorthak crystal ships. The beautiful vessels that had taken master craftsmen years to grow were crushed into a sphere of compressed matter, smaller than a human fist, then scattered as atomic particles across 1,000,000 kilometers of space. Communications, Krikstholin ordered. Send a message to the Galactic Council. Tell them we need immediate reinforcements. Tell them the humans have weapons that should not exist. But his communications officer was staring at his console in horror. Admiral, our quantum communication array is not responding. Something is interfering with our subspace transmissions. Dr. Harrison smiled as he monitored the Retribution's secondary systems. Captain, our subspace damping field is operating perfectly. The alien fleet is now completely cut off from outside communication. Whatever happens here today, the galaxy will only know about it when we choose to tell them. The third gravitational pulse was aimed at the center of the alien formation, where Admiral Krikstholin's flagship was trying to coordinate the retreat of his scattered forces. The Devourer of Stars was 5 kilometers of advanced technology and predator arrogance. Protected by shields that could deflect any known weapon, the gravitational weapon treated those defenses as if they did not exist. Space-time itself folded around the massive vessel, creating forces that no technology could resist. For a moment that lasted forever, Krikstholin felt his ship and everything in it compressed to a point smaller than an atom. Then the gravitational field released, and the flagship ceased to exist in any meaningful sense. But Krikstholin did not die. At the last second, the human weapon had modulated its field, transporting him and his senior officers to the Retribution's detention center instead of crushing them with his ship. Captain Steele had specific plans for the admiral who had murdered 12 million civilians. The alien fleet, deprived of their commander and faced with a weapon they could neither understand nor resist, began to scatter. Some ships tried to flee toward the edge of the system. Others attempted to surrender. A few, crewed by species with warrior traditions, continued to attack even though their weapons were useless. The Retribution dealt with each group appropriately. Ships that fled were allowed to escape, but not before their crews were forced to watch recordings of what had happened to their comrades. Ships that surrendered were taken intact, their crews imprisoned but alive. Ships that continued to fight were eliminated with the same casual efficiency as swatting insects. Within 6 hours, the greatest military force in galactic history had been reduced to scattered debris and a handful of refugee ships fleeing toward the galactic rim. 10,000 vessels had become less than 100, and those survivors would carry word of humanity's power to every corner of known space. Captain Steele stood in the detention center and looked at Admiral Krikstholin through the energy barrier that held the alien prisoner. The Netherrack warrior was still magnificent in his way, 8 feet of evolved predator that had dominated his homeworld for millions of years. But defeat had broken something in him that could never be repaired. "Admiral," Marcus said quietly, "I want you to understand something. The Retribution could have destroyed your entire fleet in the first few minutes of combat. We chose to make the battle last longer so that some of your ships could escape. Do you know why?" Crixtholan said nothing, but his eyes showed that he was listening. "Because we want the galaxy to know what happened here. We want every species, every government, every military force to understand that humanity is no longer the primitive race that arrived 50 years ago. We have learned from every encounter, adapted every piece of technology we've encountered, and created weapons that your science says should be impossible." Marcus leaned closer to the energy barrier. "But more than that, we want everyone to know what happens when you try to commit genocide against our species. You destroyed 8 of our colonies. You murdered 200 million of our people. You broadcast their deaths as entertainment and called it justice." The human captain's voice became deadly cold. "Admiral, you are going to help us send a message to your Galactic Council. You are going to tell them that humanity remembers every world you destroyed, every life you took, every act of cruelty you committed, and you are going to tell them that we are coming for them." Crixtholan finally found his voice. "You cannot fight the entire galaxy. There are thousands of species, millions of worlds, fleets beyond counting. Your victory here was impressive, but it was against a single armada." Marcus smiled, and something in that expression made the alien predator step backward. "Admiral, let me explain something about humans. We don't fight just to win battles. We fight to ensure that anyone who threatens our survival regrets it for the rest of their existence. The Retribution is not our only weapon. It's just the first one we decided to show you." On cue, Dr. Harrison's voice echoed through the ship's communication system. "Captain Steele, please report to the bridge. Our deep space sensors are detecting Galactic Council reinforcement fleets approaching from 7 different directions. It appears the Council has decided to commit their entire military force to human extermination." Marcus looked at Crixtholan one final time. "Perfect timing, Admiral. You'll have a front-row seat to watch what happens when the galaxy makes the mistake of thinking they can overwhelm humanity with numbers." As he left the detention center, Marcus could hear the alien admiral calling after him. "You don't understand. There are 50,000 ships coming, species you've never encountered, weapons that can crack planets." The human captain paused at the door and looked back. "Admiral, there's something you don't understand. We've been hoping they would send everything they have. It will save us the trouble of hunting them down individually." The door sealed shut, leaving Crixtholan alone with the terrible realization that humanity's demonstration of power had not been a desperate last stand. It had been an invitation for the galaxy to make the same mistake he had made, underestimating what humans were capable of when their survival was threatened. In deep space, 50,000 alien vessels were converging on the Sol system, carrying with them the combined military might of every species in the Galactic Council. They were coming to finish what Crixtholan had started, to eliminate the human threat once and for all. They had no idea that they were flying directly into humanity's trap. The greatest armada in galactic history approached the Sol system like a slow tsunami of destruction. 50,000 ships from every member species of the Galactic Council, commanded by Supreme Admiral Thisik of the Eternal Flame. The energy being had lived for 10,000 years and had never known defeat. Today, the primitive humans would learn the price of defying forces beyond their comprehension. Captain Marcus Steele stood on the bridge of the Retribution and watched the approaching fleet on his tactical display. The alien force was so vast that it would take hours for all of their ships to enter the system. Each vessel represented the pinnacle of its species' military technology. Weapons that could reshape continents and defenses that could withstand the explosion of stars. "Impressive numbers," Dr. Harrison observed as he studied the sensor readings. 50,000 ships carrying approximately 2 billion alien military personnel. They've committed essentially their entire combined fleet to our destruction. Marcus smiled grimly. "Good. When we're finished here, the galaxy will have no choice but to accept humanity's terms for peace." His communications officer looked up with concern. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the alien fleet. It's directed to all human forces on all frequencies." "Put it through," Marcus ordered. The image that appeared on the main screen was unlike anything they had seen before. Supreme Admiral Tisick was not a physical being, but rather a construct of pure energy. A being of living flame that had commanded galactic forces since before humanity discovered fire. Humans. The entity spoke with a voice like solar wind. I am Supreme Admiral Tisick of the Galactic Council Defense Force. I have come to offer you one final opportunity to surrender before your species is eliminated from existence. The energy being's form shifted and pulsed as it continued. Your victory against Admiral Crixtholan was unexpected, but it changes nothing. I command 50,000 ships crewed by 2 billion of the galaxy's finest warriors. Your single vessel, impressive though it may be, cannot stand against such numbers. Marcus activated the response channel. Supreme Admiral Tisick, this is Captain Marcus Steele of the United Earth Defense Force. Your offer of surrender is noted but declined. However, I have a counter-proposal for you. The alien commander's energy form brightened with what might have been amusement. You would negotiate from a position of complete disadvantage? Humans truly are as primitive as our intelligence suggested. My proposal is simple, Marcus continued calmly. Withdraw your forces immediately, return to Council space, and never again interfere with human affairs. In return, I will allow your fleets to retreat with minimal casualties. The laughter that came from Tisick was like the sound of a stellar furnace. Captain Steele, you command one ship against 50,000. Even if your vessel possesses the same weapons you used against Crixtholan's armada, you cannot possibly destroy us all before we overwhelm you with sheer numbers. Marcus exchanged a look with Dr. Harrison, who nodded and activated secondary systems throughout the retribution. Supreme Admiral, you're absolutely right. One ship, even one as powerful as the Retribution, could not defeat your entire armada. Fortunately, we didn't bring just one ship. Across the Sol system, space began to ripple and fold as humanity's true fleet revealed itself. What the aliens had thought was empty void, suddenly filled with vessels that their sensors had been unable to detect. Not hundreds of ships, but thousands. Each one built with the same impossible technology as the Retribution. Each one crewed by humans who had volunteered to die rather than see their species enslaved. Impossible, Tisick whispered, his energy form flickering with what might have been fear. Our sensors detected nothing. There cannot be that many human vessels. Dr. Harrison answered from the Retribution's bridge. Supreme Admiral, allow me to introduce you to humanity's mastery of physics. While you were assembling your armada, we were perfecting cloaking technology that bends space-time itself around our vessels. You have been looking directly at 3,000 human warships for the past 6 hours without knowing they were there. Admiral Lisa Torres appeared on the communication channel from her flagship, the U.S. Defiant. She had survived the battle at Mars and had spent the last 3 years preparing for this moment. Around her, the entire surviving human fleet had materialized from nothingness, their weapons powered up and ready for battle. Supreme Admiral, she said, humanity accepts your declaration of war. But before we begin, I want to make sure you understand what you're fighting for. You have come here to exterminate our entire species, because we refuse to accept relocation to a single world. You have already destroyed 8 of our colonies and murdered 200 million of our people. Now you seek to finish the job. Torres paused, letting the weight of those words settle across both fleets. Very well. If genocide is what the Galactic Council wants, then genocide is what they shall receive. But not of humanity. The Supreme Admiral's energy form blazed brighter as he realized the trap he had walked into. You cannot mean to fight the entire galaxy. Even with 3,000 ships, you are still outnumbered more than 10 to 1. Captain Steele's voice carried across all frequencies, calm and implacable. Supreme Admiral, you've made the same mistake that every enemy has made throughout human history. You think that numbers determine the outcome of battles. You're about to learn why humanity conquered our entire homeworld, despite being one of the physically weakest species on it. The battle began without ceremony or warning. The human fleet struck first, their gravitational weapons creating zones of twisted space-time that deleted entire alien formations from existence. But this time the aliens were prepared. They had studied the recordings from Crixtholan's defeat and had developed countermeasures. Energy shields designed to deflect gravitational fields activated across the alien fleet. Quantum disruptors began interfering with human weapon systems. The combined firepower of 50,000 ships focused on human vessels with surgical precision. For the first few minutes, it seemed the aliens might have found a way to counter humanity's technological advantages. Then, the humans began to adapt. Dr. Harrison had spent 3 years studying every piece of alien technology they had captured. He understood the weaknesses of every species' defenses, the limitations of every weapon system, the tactical preferences of every military tradition. More importantly, he had taught the human fleet how to exploit those weaknesses in real time. All ships, Admiral Torres commanded, implement Hydra Protocol. Show them what happens when they force humans to fight for their survival. Across the human fleet, vessels began to change. Hulls reshaped themselves using programmable matter, weapon systems reconfigured to fire ammunition that exploited specific vulnerabilities in alien defenses. Most importantly, the ships began to work together in ways that no alien military doctrine could anticipate. The Saurian dominions, massive dreadnoughts, found their energy shields useless against human weapons that phased in and out of normal space-time. The Vorthak crystal ships discovered that their perfect geometries became weaknesses when human gravitational fields focused stress along specific crystalline planes. The biomechanical vessels of the Hive Mind Collective were horrified to find human nanites that could rewrite their living hulls at the molecular level. But it was not just technology that gave humanity the advantage. It was something that 10,000 years of galactic peace had bred out of most alien species: the absolute refusal to surrender. Even in the face of certain death, Lieutenant Sarah Kim, commanding the destroyer New Sol, found her ship surrounded by 12 alien vessels. Her weapons were depleted, her shields were down, and her hull was breached in 17 places. Any civilized species would have surrendered. Instead, she activated her ship's self-destruct sequence and rammed the largest enemy vessel. The nuclear explosion took out 6 alien ships and crippled 4 more, while Sarah and her crew of 93 volunteers became heroes in a war that would reshape the galaxy. Their sacrifice was multiplied 1,000 times across the battlefield as human crews chose death over surrender, turning every engagement into a lesson in what humanity was willing to sacrifice for freedom. Supreme Admiral Thysic watched his mighty armada being systematically destroyed by an enemy that fought with tactics he could not comprehend. The humans were not just winning, they were teaching the galaxy a new definition of warfare. All ships, he commanded desperately, target the human command vessel. If we can destroy their flagship, their coordination will collapse. But even as he gave the order, Thysic realized that the humans had no single point of failure. Every ship in their fleet was capable of independent command. Every captain was prepared to continue the fight alone if necessary. They had built their military around the assumption that any battle could become a fight to the death. Captain Steele watched the alien fleet's desperate assault on his position and felt something approaching pity. These beings had ruled the galaxy for so long that they had forgotten what real war looked like. They expected negotiations, mercy for the defeated, and honor among enemies. Humanity offered none of these things to those who sought their extinction. All ships, he commanded, final phase. Show them why humans survived 50,000 years of evolution on a world that tried to kill us every day. The human fleet's true weapons revealed themselves at last, not just gravitational manipulators and quantum disruptors, but weapons that attacked the fundamental forces that held matter together. Alien ships found their atoms losing cohesion, their energy sources becoming unstable, their crews aging decades in seconds as time dilution fields washed over them. But the most terrifying weapon in humanity's arsenal was not technological, it was psychological. As alien crews watched their fleets being destroyed, they heard human voices on every frequency. Not threats or boasts, but something far worse, laughter. The sound of a species that had found genuine joy in the destruction of those who sought their annihilation. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it ended, 3,000 human ships still floated in the wreckage of what had once been the galaxy's greatest armada. Of 50,000 alien vessels, fewer than 100 survived, and those only because their crews had abandoned their ships and fled in escape pods. Supreme Admiral Thysic found himself a prisoner aboard the Retribution, his energy form contained in a field that prevented his escape. Captain Steele looked at the ancient being who had commanded galactic forces for 10 millennia and felt only cold satisfaction. "Supreme Admiral," Marcus said, "I want you to carry a message back to your Galactic Council. Tell them that humanity's war with the galaxy is now officially begun. Tell them that we will hunt down every species that participated in the attempted genocide of our people. Tell them that we will not stop until every alien government that supported these actions has been replaced with leadership that understands humanity's place in the galactic order. Thysix, energy form flickered weakly. You cannot rule the galaxy through fear and violence. Civilized species will not accept. Civilized? Marcus interrupted. Supreme Admiral, you just brought 50,000 ships to exterminate every human in existence, including our children. You destroyed 8 of our colonies and broadcast the deaths of 200 million civilians as entertainment. Please don't lecture me about civilization. The human captain activated a holographic display showing the current positions of human fleets throughout the galaxy. Your civilized species have 72 hours to begin evacuating their military personnel from all installations within 100 light-years of human space. After that time, we will begin systematic destruction of every alien military asset we can find. Dr. Harrison joined the conversation from his monitoring station. Captain, I should mention that our deep space sensors are detecting alien fleets fleeing toward the galactic rim. It appears word of our victory is spreading faster than their ships can travel. Marcus smiled. Good. Fear is an excellent teacher, and the galaxy has much to learn about humanity. He turned back to Thysix. Supreme Admiral, you will be released with a fast ship and an escort to the edge of human space. When you reach the Galactic Council, you will deliver our terms for ending this war. Terms? The energy being whispered. Complete withdrawal of all alien forces from human territory. Full reparations for the destroyed colonies to be paid over the next century. Recognition of humanity as the galaxy's primary peacekeeping force. And war crimes tribunals for every leader who authorized the attempted genocide of our species. Marcus paused, letting the magnitude of humanity's demands settle in the alien's consciousness. If these terms are not accepted within 1 standard year, humanity will begin the systematic conquest of every alien homeworld. We will not stop until every species in this galaxy understands that humans are not prey to be relocated or exterminated. We are apex predators who have finally reached the stars. 3 days later, Supreme Admiral Thysix's damaged ship limped into the emergency session of the Galactic Council. The Great Crystal Palace was filled with representatives from every member species, all of them desperate to understand how their greatest military force had been completely destroyed by a species they had dismissed as primitive. Thysix's report was simple and terrifying. Humanity had become something that the galaxy was not equipped to fight. They had technology that should not have been possible, tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare, and most importantly, the absolute determination to destroy any enemy that threatened their survival. The vote was closer than expected, but in the end, survival instinct overcame pride. The Galactic Council formally surrendered to humanity, accepting terms that would reshape the balance of power among the stars. Dr. Sarah Chen, humanity's former ambassador, returned to the Crystal Palace as Earth's new supreme representative. The aliens who had once laughed at her warnings now listened to her words with the attention they deserved. As she took her place at the head of the council table, she looked around at the beings who had learned too late the price of underestimating human determination. Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of various energy states, she began, welcome to the new galactic order. Humanity looks forward to a long and peaceful relationship with all species who can learn to coexist with apex predators. Outside the palace, human warships patrolled the space between stars, their dark hulls blocking out ancient suns as they established humanity's authority over the galaxy. The age of alien dominance was over. The age of humanity had begun.